Hello, I'm Andrew Burnett from Aldine ISD, and I teach at Victory Early College High School. And today I'm going to talk about ELL objectives for MOOPIL. And the most important thing with ELL is establishing guidelines for effective English as a second language instruction for English learners through a framework that recognizes the rich and varied cultural wealth, knowledge, and skills that diverse students bring to schools while learning vocabulary. Here at Aldine, we understand the unique challenges that ELLs face on a daily basis. Our ELL population is large and growing in our district. While the Hispanic students' average scores have increased across the assessment years, white students continue to produce higher scores at about a 25-point difference on all assessments. Closing the Hispanic-wide achievement gap continues to be a challenge, as this gap is increasing over time and the accountability measures are rising. Undoubtedly, there needs to be a way of delivering explicit, evidence-based vocabulary instruction for ELs. Research indicates that vocabulary knowledge is essential for academic growth across the curriculum. The key is balanced vocabulary instruction, explicit, implicit, and strategy instruction. In explicit instruction, the teacher will teach students the definitions of words in student-friendly language. In implicit instruction, the teacher will teach ELs to read and learn through the context in which an unknown word is surrounded. In strategy instruction, context helps ELs to see relationships between known and unknown vocabulary words. Those relationships between words give ELs more information than a definition alone for vocabulary development. As reported by Husty and Jackson 2008, there is an increased vocabulary development when vocabulary instruction is context-based. Strategy instruction needs to be taught so that ELs learn to link their background knowledge to new concepts for meaningful associations and have strategies that they can use to successfully resolve problems in comprehension due to lack of vocabulary. When vocabulary instruction includes explicit, implicit, and strategy instruction, ELs are repeatedly exposed to the target vocabulary in a variety of contexts and increase their individual vocabulary development. Bottom line, using multiple strategies helps EL as well as general population students learn new vocabulary words. Let's look at some real-world examples of balanced vocabulary instruction, explicit, implicit, and strategy instruction in my classroom. Each day that my students enter the classroom, they have 3 to 5 vocabulary words on the board. I choose the 5 words based on what the students are about to read or do in the class that day. I take time to review the previous content and build on the scaffolding from the previous day. For example, we are in the Latin America unit of World Geography and we are learning about the Panama Canal. I give them a handout with today's reading and have added the new vocabulary in the margins with definitions. I go over these definitions explicitly and give them the definitions. I keep my ELL's first exposure to new vocabulary relatively brief. I will have the students continue to work with these new words in a meaningful way so they can be more easily assimilated into the students' vocabulary. I next do implicit instruction. I will have the students do a reading on the Panama Canal that integrates the vocabulary words. The key vocabulary will help the students understand the text, and it also gives the students more opportunities to interact with the new words. Students can reference their glossary. What I'm doing is eliciting the vocabulary that was used within the text, so I was constantly asking them to use Tier 2 and Tier 3 level words and academic vocabulary so that the learning was constantly reinforced. I don't just want them to have exposure to the words, I want them to actually use the words in part because I want them to have some sort of ownership of that. I found that at the beginning of this year and the beginning of last year, when I was exposing them to the vocabulary, it was very easy for them to have this recall with the word, but then not be able to produce a sentence using that word. A lot of it comes from this fear of sounding uneducated and this fear of sounding like they didn't know what they were doing, or they couldn't speak English, or they weren't intelligent. But my students have a tendency to go back to what they are comfortable with, so instead of using their Tier 2 vocabulary or the academic vocabulary, they really were falling back to their Tier 1 words they are used to talking with. So I moved to phase 3, which was strategy instruction. I knew it needed to be taught so that EOs learn to link their background knowledge to new concepts for meaningful associations and have strategies that they can use to successfully resolve problems in comprehension due to lack of vocabulary. There is increased vocabulary development when vocabulary instruction is context-based. Many of my students come from Latin America and are familiar with travel and a means to transport from one place to another using water. I tied their personal experiences with what they were learning about the Panama Canal and reinforced this learning by having them write sentences using their newfound vocabulary. By having them write sentences and by having them write short answers and using those words, I know that they know the word and they know how to use it and they know what it means and having them feel comfortable with it. So it's a comfort thing and a knowledge thing too. The key vocabulary will help the students understand the text, and it also gives the students more opportunities to interact with the new words. As we all know, through repeated exposure and practicing, that's really how vocabulary gets from the page into the memory. Using explicit, implicit, and strategy instruction has proven effective in teaching ALL students. We hope to use these strategies and more in Aldine to help our growing ALL population achieve at the same level and at the same rate of the other population of our students. In that way, here in Aldine, we can achieve great success with our students and produce the nation's best.